Hi, my name is John Williams. I co-own and operate Red Crib Acres with my wife Katie Adams. We're a small apple orchard outside of Monticello, Illinois. We're here today to learn about pruning. First thing I want to talk about is tools for pruning. So there's a myriad of different tools you can use to prune your trees, but there's sort of three basic tools that can get a lot of the work done. These are a pretty basic pruner manual that you can get from a hardware store, you can get online, you can get from tree equipment, retailers, things like that. A step up would be an electric pruner like this. This is great for if you have multiple trees or if you maybe have some trouble closing your hands or pain in your hands, that this really cuts down on the amount of work your hand has to do to make those cuts. Moving up from that, we have loppers. They come in a couple different styles. You can get them with telescoping arms. These ones are a ratcheting type, so it cuts down on the amount of force you have to do to make the cut, and this would be for larger limbs, maybe up to about 2 inches, while the pruners you would use for smaller limbs up to 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. If you're going for even bigger limbs, doing some major cuts, third option is pruning saw, which come also in a myriad of styles. There are foldable ones, so you want one that has a safety lock so it doesn't close on you, or you can get one that does not close and you can just carry around in a sheath on your belt. In addition to those items, you might find it useful to have chainsaw, pole saw, pole pruners. There is a myriad of other options out there. The pruners, the loppers, and the saw are sort of the base three that you can really get a lot of your pruning done with. Before I start making cuts, I want to look at the general structure of the tree, think about where fruit will be hanging, how that fruit will have access to light, because access to light means it'll ripen quicker and more efficiently. And you want to also think about the general health of the tree and make sure it's not going to be overloaded or have the chance of being damaged. So when you are deciding where to make a cut, you sort of have a few options. So we'll take this branch for example. It's a water sprout. It's coming fairly straight up. It's 1 year growth, which means it was put on this tree in the last season. When you're looking at buds, you can make an attempt to grow a branch out from a first year growth by seeing where a bud is and making a cut just above it to hopefully encourage the branch to come out right where that bud is, closest to the cut. In addition, if you don't really want new growth coming out from that spot, you can bring it back right up to the previous limb and make that cut. And then the closer you are, the more likelihood that cut will heal over versus putting out new branches in the future. If you do end up leaving it, with 1/2 inch or so like that, then you'll end up increasing your chance you'll have maybe 6 new water sprouts coming up from that location, and an increased chance that cut won't heal over properly. So you really want to try to come in and make a cut much closer to that previous main branch that it's connected to. So I'm going to come in here and take these limbs out about right here, in consideration of how this tree is starting to lean a bit to the north. At this size, you could either come in with a saw, but the loppers are a great tool at the sort of 1 to 2 inch size. So I'm going to come in here These ratcheting loppers are great, give you some really nice leverage and make a nice, fairly clean cut right back to where this branch can continue to grow and be healthy, but then centering the weight of the tree closer to the trunk. So on this older Golden Delicious tree, we're going to take out a larger limb. This one would be pushing it for those loppers, but definitely is a bigger limb that could get taken out to open up the area here. And for this, I'm going to use the pole saw. What's important, or not the pole saw, the pruning saw. What is important for making this cut is to do an undercut. So to cut the lower side a little bit, because what will happen is if you're cutting just from above, is the weight of this limb will come down and likely tear the bark back, and that is very unhealthy for the tree. So what I usually do is start making the cut, and then once I have the cut established, you know, once I'm maybe half an inch in, I'll come from the underside, make a matching cut, and then finish the cut from above. And one consideration when making these larger cuts is the angle of the cut. So I'm going to cut it so this open wound is facing towards the ground, and it'll get less wet during rainstorms and therefore be less likely to rot or be a point of disease for the tree. So I'm going to hold the branch steady because this branch will move, but being very careful about where my hand is, because pruning saws are extremely sharp, and usually once a year I catch a finger a little bit, and it's a painful time. So be careful of where your hands are, and you can start making the cut. So I've made that initial cut about half an inch, maybe to an inch in. So I'm gonna line up my saw on the underside, try to match up with that cut. If you do pick one side or the other of the cut, it's better to be a little bit further or closer to the trunk of the tree than away, to prevent that bark tearing from happening at a longer distance. So I'm going to make that underside cut, once again about half an inch or so, and then I can come in from the top side and finish off the cut. Watch out, it's gonna... So there you have it. A fairly clean cut. I can come in here and just finish cleaning that up. And of course, I ended up marking this little branch, so I'll certainly come in and remove that guy because it will probably be pretty unhealthy now that I've cut it. So with this tree, there are a few crosses. This branch is coming into contact with this one here, so I could go either way. I could either cut this one down and leave room for this, or I could take this one back and leave room for this. So for me personally, I would come here and take this limb out, partially because this limb is at a really nice angle. It's parallel to the ground, so there's a higher chance that it will produce fruit. In addition, cutting off from this limb that already has a lot of area to produce fruit, to cut down on its fruit load is going to make it less likely to split down here or somewhere else on the limb if we were to see a heavy fruit load this year. Another thing to keep an eye out for when you're doing your pruning is looking for mummies. These are mummies. These are fruit from last year that were not given the energy to fully form. These, in addition to any fruit hanging over from last year, are good to remove away from the tree because they will be sources of disease inoculum for that coming year. So take the time to find those mummies, pull them off, ideally get them away from the tree, at the very least get them onto the ground, and that will hopefully cut down on the chances of scab and other diseases coming back the following year. So when considering how to start pruning the tree, first things first is it's an art form, not a science. So there are going to be many cuts that I might make that you would maybe not make, or vice versa. There's a lot of decisions you're making that could go either way. So to start, it can be difficult to make that decision, make that cut, but with the general idea of trying to open the tree up, trying to make it so if it produces fruit, it can be healthy, is a good place to start in terms of trying to decide, does that branch go or does it stay? Really, once you start going, you can just start making cuts. Every so often, take a step back, see if there's an area you missed or an area that needs maybe a little bit more attention. And there's always going to be a time where you'll make a cut, you'll take a step back and go, I could have left that limb, and the tree's going to keep growing. There's going to be new branches that are grown every year. So if you over prune to a certain extent, it's not going to harm the tree. You just may have a few less apples this year.